Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. The medical center on Xanadu was a marvel of technology. The smooth metal surfaces reflected the soft blue light that filled the room and gave it an ethereal appearance. The air was fresh and sterile, with automated drones buzzing around, making sure every aspect of the center's operation was spotless. An experienced xenobiologist nurse, known for her composure in the most difficult situations, was making her rounds. She belonged to a species of graceful creatures with an almost ethereal appearance, whose skin shimmered with silver and blue shades. They moved with unflappable grace, and their entire civilization was built on the principles of efficiency, calmness, and the advancement of medical science. She had to deal with a variety of injuries, fractures, organ failures, and many others, but nothing could prepare her for what was to happen that quiet evening. She was just checking on her patients when suddenly something unexpected happened. The emergency doors burst open, and two xenobiologist medics rushed in, their faces expressing a rare urgency for them. They were carrying a seriously injured man on a floating stretcher. One of the medics spoke with concern in his voice. The xenobiologists had only recently arrived in the Triple Star 9 system, and although they had heard stories about Earthlings, their personal contact with them was limited. Humans were considered an intriguing and fragile species that displayed a strange mixture of curiosity and recklessness. The condition of the man on the stretcher was critical. His breathing was shallow, his body was covered with deep cuts and bruises, and the blood stood out in a bright red spot against the sterile blue background of the medical bay. The makeshift bandages on his torso were soaked, and his left leg was twisted unnaturally, indicating multiple fractures. Lyra quickly moved the stretcher to an isolated compartment where the patient's condition could be stabilized. Lyra asked one of the medics as she set up the medical scanners. "Captain Drake Hunter," the medic replied. He was injured during joint training in the Gamma Sector. Lyra was familiar with the Gamma Sector, a rugged terrain used for endurance training, with steep cliffs and unpredictable terrain. The xenobiologists used it as a testing ground for their resilience and adaptability, but she couldn't understand why humans were allowed there in the first place. Their physiology seemed too fragile for such a hostile environment. Lyra began her examination. Medical devices projected a virtual image of Drake's injuries in the air above his body. She carefully ran her fingers over the holographic image, squinting as she assessed the damage. The results were much more serious than she had expected. Multiple fractures, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. A femur, 3 broken ribs, and a punctured lung are just some of the injuries Drake suffered in the accident. Multiple bruises and severe internal bleeding made his condition critical. Such injuries would require months of intensive therapy to heal, and even then, the chances of survival were uncertain. To stabilize her vital signs, Lyra instructed the nearest medical robot. The robot hummed softly as it injected a series of injections containing a mixture of painkillers, blood-clotting agents, and tissue-regenerating substances. Lyra watched the holographic display. Drake's pulse was gradually returning to normal, although his condition remained critical. The medics who delivered Drake and remained in the room for a while with tense faces finally broke the silence. One of them asked with a note of uncertainty in his voice, "Do you think he'll survive?" Lyra hesitated. "I'm not sure. People's physiology is different from ours. We will do everything in our power, but the injuries are very serious." The doctors nodded seriously and left the room, leaving Lyra alone with her patient. She studied it for a while, thinking about the problems associated with treating such severe injuries. She had heard about people's resilience, but looking at Drake, so weak and wounded, she couldn't help but wonder how true that was. Even though his face was covered in dirt and blood, there was determination in his features, even in his unconscious state. She found it intriguing to see a species that had traveled such a long way from its distant blue planet to join the intergalactic community. Lyra adjusted the medical bed to make Drake more comfortable. She moved quickly and carefully, running her hand over the various controls that adjusted the artificial gravity field around his injuries to reduce the pressure. She injected nanobots designed to repair tissues at a microscopic level into his bloodstream and launched a series of scans to monitor his condition. That was all she could do at the moment. Hours passed, and Lyra remained next to Drake, not taking her eyes off the monitors. His condition was stable, but barely. The nanobots worked tirelessly, stitching fabrics. Lyra knew that the real challenges were still ahead. Humans, unlike xenobiologists, had unpredictable patterns of healing. Their bodies were tough in some ways, but fragile in others. The scans showed that his immune system was working at its limit, fighting both physical injury and the alien nanobots that were trying to help him recover. Lyra leaned back in her chair, and her thoughts returned to the stories she had heard about people. They were said to be adaptable, resourceful, and stubborn, qualities that served them well on their unstable home planet Earth with its unpredictable weather, natural disasters, and diverse ecosystems. These traits have shaped a species capable of withstanding incredible hardship. Lyra wondered if this stubbornness would help Drake now. Suddenly, a soft moan broke the monotonous buzzing in the medical bay. Lyra's eyes snapped to Drake, and her heart skipped a beat. His eyelids fluttered, and he woke up. His fingers twitched slightly, indicating that he was coming to his senses. It was still too early for him to wake up from such a traumatic experience, but here he was, already struggling to regain consciousness. Lyra came up to him, her voice calm but firm. "Captain Drake, can you hear me?" "What is it?" she asked. Her xenobiologist accent made her words sound melodious. Drake's eyes slowly opened, his gaze unfocused and glassy. He blinked a few times, his gaze finally focusing on Lyra. He looked disoriented, and there was confusion on his face. "Where am I?" "What is it?" he croaked, barely audible. "You're in the medical bay on Xanadu," Lyra replied, scanning his face for signs of distress. "You were injured during training. You need to stay still and let the medical equipment do its job." Drake grimaced, trying to move. A grimace of pain distorted his face. It was a combination of determination and deep-rooted fear. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I understand," he said, his voice softening. "But I have to be with them. They need me." Lyra sighed, her face softened. She knew it was pointless to argue with him. He was a man of action, and she admired that. "Very well," she said, her voice becoming resigned. "I'll go with you. I will make sure that you receive the necessary care." Drake nodded. A slight smile appeared on his lips. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of gratitude. Lyra smiled back, her heart filled with warmth from his gratitude. She knew that in his own way he was grateful for her presence. Lyra spent the rest of the day watching Drake recover. Her surprise grew by the hour. The nanobots worked more efficiently than she expected, thanks to Drake's own immune system, which seemed to adapt quickly to their presence. Although his vital signs were still weak, they were improving. She watched as his body began to heal at a rate that exceeded her expectations. The broken bones slowly healed, and the torn muscles regenerated. By the end of the first day, Drake was not only stable, but also showed signs of significant improvement. Lyra couldn't believe her eyes. She was treating xenobiologist soldiers with much more serious injuries, who needed weeks to regain consciousness, and this man was already on the road to recovery. A few hours later, when the artificial lighting in the medical bay dimmed, mimicking the darkness of the night, Lyra found herself sitting by Drake's bed, her mind full of questions. What allowed him to recover so quickly? Was it just a biological phenomenon, or was there something more behind it? It was something deeper, something uniquely human. She watched Drake fall asleep and wake up, his face sometimes contorted with pain, but he never gave up. Lyra knew that she was seeing something extraordinary, something that challenged her understanding of medicine and the human spirit. She made a note to report her observations to the medical council, but deep down she knew that no report could truly convey what she had seen. This was not just a matter of biology. It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of a species that refused to be defeated. Sitting there, watching her patient, Lyra couldn't help but be in awe of this fragile but resilient creature. The medical bay was a place of calm, with only the quiet hum of machinery breaking the silence. When she closed her eyes for a moment, her thoughts turned to the unusual and extraordinary species known as humans. Lyra, after spending the night at Captain Drake's bedside, woke up. She dozed off for a short moment, her thoughts still focused on the persistent patient, the man under her care. Captain Drake continued to sleep. His breathing was steady, sometimes broken by moans of pain. She looked at his face, noticing the lines of determination showing on it. Even in her sleep, she couldn't help but wonder what was the source of his power. The nurse, Lyra, walked over to Captain Drake's bed, adjusting it for a more comfortable position. "Good morning, Captain," she said, her voice soothing. "How are you feeling today?" Captain Drake let out a hoarse sigh. "I've been better," he replied, his voice still hoarse but with a hint of humor. His eyes scanned the unfamiliar surroundings. "I think I'm still alive, so it's already good." Lyra nodded, not used to such reactions from patients. Xenobiologists often have patients recover in silence, recognizing the seriousness of their condition and trusting the care of the medical team. However, this patient, despite his injuries, was joking and smiling. He didn't seem to fully realize the gravity of the situation, or perhaps he decided to ignore it. "You're alive," Lyra said, "and that's all that matters." After the treatment, Drake took a slow, painful breath, trying to sit up, which Lyra didn't like very much. She quickly put her hand on his shoulder, trying to get him to lie down again. "You need to rest," she insisted. "Your injuries are in critical condition. You're barely alive, with multiple fractures." He interrupted her, his words accompanied by a wheeze as he continued to move. He managed to prop himself up on his elbows, his face pale but determined. "I can't just lie here. My team needs me." Lyra's eyes widened. "Your team is safe. They were taken care of. Your priority right now is to focus on recovery." Drake looked at her, his gaze intense. There was something about his eyes and unwavering determination that Lyra found both baffling and mesmerizing. "They may be safe now, but the mission is not over," he said. "I can't stay away. They need me there." Lyra was amazed. She couldn't understand it. Her kind has always appreciated rest and recovery. "I have to insist," I said, my tone determined but compassionate. "If you overexert yourself, you risk undoing all the progress you've made. Your body is not ready for such intense activity." Drake replied with a tired, almost mischievous grin. "You know, I've heard that before," he said. "The doctors on Earth said the same thing when I broke my ribs during training. They advised me not to strain myself, and I was back on my feet in just a few days." Lyra was amazed. "Did you get broken ribs during training and come back a week later?" The thought was almost unimaginable to her. It usually took weeks, if not months, for a xenobiologist with fractured ribs to heal. While recovering, Drake casually discussed the experience, as if it were a minor inconvenience. "Exactly," Drake said, his gaze softening as he looked at Lyra. "It's just a part of who we are. You know, we keep moving forward. We can't afford to give up." He was silent for a moment, his eyes distracted, as if recalling some distant memory of home. "There are people who are waiting for me. My family, my friends. I can't let them down. And here my team is like my family. I won't give up." Lyra was silent. His words resonated in her in a way she hadn't expected. It wasn't just a biological survival instinct, but a conscious decision to fight, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Now she understood why humans thrived despite being a relatively young species. They were connected by something deeper, something intangible. A willpower that refused to break even in the face of insurmountable difficulties. She watched Drake struggle, his face contorted in pain as he tried to sit up, but his determination remained unwavering. Lyra sighed softly, realizing that it was useless to argue with him. Instead, she adjusted the medical bed to support his back, allowing him to sit up without causing further strain. "If you insist, at least let me help you," she said. Drake looked at her, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, Nurse Lyra," he said, his voice softer now. He shifted slightly, wincing as his broken ribs protested the movement. "I think I owe you one," he smiled. Lyra smiled back, a small, sincere smile. "You don't owe me anything, Captain. It is my duty to take care of your well-being. But if you really want to repay me, perhaps you could follow my instructions and not strain yourself." Drake chuckled, though the action sent a wave of pain through his entire body. "I'll do my best," he said. As the day wore on, Lyra found herself staying by Drake's side, fascinated by his resilience and stories about Earth. He was talking about the mountains where he lived. Growing up in harsh winters and hot summers, he recalled his family, his mother's delicious apple pie, and his younger sister's ambition to become a paramedic. He talked about his friends, the joy they shared, and the vows they made to support each other. As she listened, her interest deepened with every word. She had always known that people were unique, but now she was beginning to realize that their resilience stemmed not only from their physical strength, but also from their interpersonal connections and bonds. Drake wasn't just recovering for himself. He was recovering for the people he loved, for the promises he made. It was this unwavering determination, this refusal to give up, that made his body heal in a way that defied logic. By the end of the day, Drake was able to stand, albeit with the help of a lyre and crutches. His legs were weak, but he refused to stay chained to the bed. Lyra walked beside him, her support giving him the strength to continue. Her hands hovered next to him, ready to catch him if he stumbled, and she watched as he took each step with deliberate caution. His face was a mask of concentration. Every move was a struggle. Every breath was heavy, but he walked forward, refusing to let his injuries hold him back. "You're a very determined man, Captain Drake," she said, her tone a mixture of annoyance and respect. Drake looked at her, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, determination is a family thing," he said. "My mom always said that I have a fat head." Lyra shook her head, unable to suppress a smile. She had never met anyone like him. A man who could find humor even in the most difficult situations. A man who refused to give in to despair. It was both confusing and inspiring. When they returned to the bed, Lyra helped Drake lie down, propping up pillows for him. She conducted another checkup, checked his vital signs, and was pleased to see that his condition had improved even more. His pulse was steady, his blood pressure was stable, and his broken bones continued to heal. "You're making amazing progress," Lyra said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "Your body is healing at an extraordinary rate." Drake looked at her, his face. "I've always thought that strength comes from the body, from the physical ability to endure pain and difficulties. However, now I understand that the real power comes from within, from the heart, from the bonds that unite people." I watched Drake as he fell asleep, his breathing calm, his face peaceful. He had a long way to go, but I had no doubt that he would succeed. He was a fighter, and he had a reason to fight. Sitting there, watching my patient, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps we have something to learn from people. Something about resilience, about bravery, about an indomitable spirit that refuses to be defeated. Perhaps, after all, Not only humans needed xenobiologists, but xenobiologists needed humans too. For the first time, I understood the reason for accepting people into the interstellar community. They weren't the most advanced or powerful, but they had one fundamental quality: their humanity. However, they possessed something even more significant: the determination to persevere towards the goal, despite the obstacles. And this, as I understood it, was a force capable of changing the galaxy.